Hello, everyone, and welcome to MedNews Week, where our mission is connecting medicine globally by bringing cutting edge medical knowledge and meaningful conversation with leaders shaping the future of medicine. I'm Adeena Musheer, and joining me is my colleague and co host, Zara Baloch.
Today, we are excited to launch Match Confidential, a MedNews Week series taking applicants inside the residency selection process through candid conversations with program directors, medical educators, and residency leaders who know the process from the other side.
This series is particularly for residency applicants across different specialties, and over time, we'll bring in different voices and perspectives because no single program, specialty, or residency leader represents how every program makes decisions.
And with applicants preparing for this application cycle, we wanted to start the questions many of us are asking right now. How should I approach each section of ERAS? What actually matters to programs? And how do I make the entire application feel intentional, authentic, and true to who I am as an applicant?
Our inaugural guest is Dr. Christopher Bray, board certified internal medicine physician, physician educator, and residency mentor with nearly 2 decades of experience training physicians. He helped build an internal medicine residency from its earliest stages through ACGME accreditation and went on to lead the program for 7 years, training more than 100 physicians across 7 graduating classes.
Dr. Bray completed both his MD and PhD in molecular genetics and microbiology at the University of Florida. He also founded the Doc Bray Foundation, where he provides physician mentorship and career guidance completely free of charge. I've personally had the opportunity to benefit from that, which makes it especially meaningful for me and for having him with us today.
And outside medicine, Dr. Bray lives in Gainesville with his wife and 2 sons, along with a family of ducks and chickens, and enjoys spending time at Florida Springs, swimming, scuba diving, and paddleboarding. Dr. Bray, we're honored to have you as our inaugural guest for Match Confidential. Given your experience in residency leadership, education, and mentorship, we really could not have thought of a better person to help us begin this series. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, you're welcome. It's a pleasure being here, Adeena and Zara, and viewers here as well too. I really like the process of trying to figure out the structure behind some of these complicated features and help people out that way. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Dr. Bray. And before we get into the application itself, we would love for our audience to know the person behind all of that experience. What part of your own journey most shaped the physician and educator and mentor you are today?
Excellent. I would say that my journey started in the university time frame, and I was interested in building. I also am interested in connecting the dots between specialties. Initially, I'd started in kind of more of a mathematics, computer science realm, kind of merged into the biology realm. Chose to do a little bit more of a research angle. I had applied to MSTP programs around the country, ended up getting into the University of Florida program. There was able to do both the medical training and the PhD. PhD, again, like you said, molecular genetics and microbiology. Worked with stem cells, worked with genetics, worked with gene therapy. Really enjoyed it. It's not easy to get a PhD in those topics. You have to build projects. Those projects can fail. They're long term. But that's something that really defines my career. I like building projects. I like looking for outcomes from those projects. My next project was kind of moving out into private practice, learning that system, learning how to deal with the business of medicine. I enjoyed that. I really enjoyed working with residents, flipped over to the program director role, really built up that system there. It started as 15 residents. We expanded up to 60. Ultimately, like you said earlier, it's over 160 residents passed through that program during the 7 years there. We had really good outcomes. We had people going to the top-notch fellowship programs around the country, really good scores, pass rates, etc. So again, I like building systems and then looking at outcomes. Now I'm working on a direct primary care clinic, building that system, really trying to change the model of medicine to really help focus on helping patients and connecting the doctor and the patient and really bringing back some of that reward that we get from working with patients hand to hand.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. It gives everyone a better perspective you're bringing to this conversation today. I'll now ask Adeena to ask the next question.
Thank you so much, Zara. And now let's take applicants behind the scenes. When ERAS application reach a residency program, how does the review process actually begin? And what makes one application immediately earn a closer look?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, this is one of those processes that it's really important to understand, and you can battle the system, or you can understand the system and kind of adapt to it. And I would always choose understand the system and adapt to it rather than sort of battle it, because you will end up losing your money, you'll lose your time if you don't understand the system. So. I want to start with numbers first, because I think people don't understand kind of the general numbers that a program director faces. Now, each program is going to be unique. Internal medicine is by far one of the busiest programs that's out there. I would typically get between 4,000 and 5,000 interviews per season, applications per season. Other programs, internal medicine, probably 2,000 to 5,000 is pretty typical. Smaller programs, less than that. But the average program director and team working with the program director, faculty team, can't really go through more than probably 800 or 1,000 applications. So even if you were to go through that number, you're talking about months of time invested. And you got to keep in mind, we're physicians, we're leaders, we're teachers, we're doing a lot of other tasks. And so we don't have the resources to be able to dedicate to doing a complete review of everybody's application during that process. And I tried, really hard by the end of the season to do a holistic review of almost everybody's application, meaning, dig into the experiences and dig into the personal statement, try and learn the story before anybody kind of got that rejection. That was the process. The time spent initially on the interview, you're talking about minutes, not hours, not, days. You're not talking on the initial review, a panel looking at it. You're talking about minutes to decide who falls into the pot that goes on to the committee review or the faculty review. So your story on the application needs to be a coherent story. It needs to be your story. It cannot be a story that anybody else could grab and then insert into somebody else's application. It has to be your story, and that's important. Now, filters are important as well, too. And this is what I was talking about just a minute ago, where instead of battling the system, you have to flow with the system. So filters are real. If a program director is given guidance that they can't take certain visas, that's usually, what they have to stick to. They're not going to bend over backwards and try and fight against the system to make exceptions for everybody. It's just too much work. It won't happen. If they have cutoffs on step 2, that's going to probably be their cutoff. And, trying to push your way in when you have lower than that minimum is going to be very difficult. If they need U.S. clinical experience, a certain amount, that's going to be, if you don't have it, that's going to be difficult to kind of push through. So the filters are real. How do you find out what they are? They're not like advertised on the website. Go to Residency Explorer, look at the details there. There are websites that do show kind of at least what they publish as far as their requirements. But they're also the information and the data on these sites show who's actually in their program. If 5% of the programs are IMGs versus US grads, that gives you an idea of which program they're looking for and what they're accepting. If even if you're a U.S. grad, some programs will accept more heavily MDs versus DOs. Some will accept more heavily from certain universities. You got to know those details when you apply, and swim with the current rather than against the current when you pick your programs. So that's the initial process. It whittles down quite a bit, probably from the 4,000 to 800. Then you send the 800 for faculty or chief review. They will probably spend minutes on the application. And we'll talk a little bit more kind of what are some of the key details, but they'll spend minutes on it, put it into a score, and then eventually like a committee will look at that score and then send for interview. Typically for a program that's got 16 to 25 residents per class, you're talking maybe 250 to 300 people that get interviewed for those slots. So that's how it works. That's kind of the numbers, and that's how it works.
Thank you so much. And I think this is extremely helpful because applicants rarely get to see what is actually happening on their program side once they click submit on their applications. I'll now pass on the mic to Zara for the next question.
Thank you, Adeena, and thank you, Dr. Bray. And you already touched upon the programs applying filters. And I believe many of the programs use filters before an application receives a holistic or more deeper review. What are the most common filters applicants should be aware of, and which tends to function more like firm screens versus factors that may be considered in context?
I mean, there are ways to bypass filters, and we can kind of, talk about that, but I would not guarantee that. I would not rely on that strategy. It's a strategy, and I'll talk more about it in a second. But year of graduation was one that I didn't mention in that list earlier. That's, again, one, and this is not always the program director deciding this. The program director works within a system. That program director will have a DIO above them. They'll have a whole slew of department deans, CMO offices, and more of a private practice. And there are expectations and requirements of the program director. Now, the program director is not going to go out there and say, hey, I've got this person, that person, this other person providing me with these requirements. They're going to own the requirements. So it might seem like they're coming from the program director, but they're coming from the whole system. It's not just the program director. So year of graduation is another one that I mentioned. Some programs it's 3, some programs it's 5, and they'll set that as a filter. And typically, that the people that pass that filter will go into the buckets. Step 2 scores is another big filter. Usually different programs are different. Use what's advertised for that program, and different specialties are different too. You've got to, if you have a lower score, look at the specialties that are more consistent with your score. If you have a higher score, you have more options, and that's just the reality of it. One standard deviation below the mean, whatever that is. Sometimes that's in the mid 230s. That's kind of a good idea of where you're going to pass the minimal gate for step 2. Now, keep in mind for step 2, because there's a lot of competition for step 2 scores, higher is not necessarily going to be better. It's a minimum threshold for a lot of people, and it gets your application looked at, passes through that filter, but it gets your application looked at. And then the rest of the match, the whole ideally holistic match, is what people use to push you in. So spend your resources wisely. If you're already getting a 245, 250, don't spend another 6 months and $100,000 to get a 270, 275. Spend it on getting that good letter of recommendation. So step scores are important. As I mentioned, visa. If a program doesn't offer, H-1Bs are a little bit pending right now. They're in kind of litigation and such. I think they'll come back for medical residents. I don't think they're gone forever. But if a program doesn't accept or doesn't sponsor H-1Bs, just don't push that angle. If they do J-1s, you can get your ECFMG certification and go from there. Something else. I mean, if ECFMG certification has lapsed or is not present on the file at the time that the program reads it, they can skip over that. And I've seen a few people where their step scores are absent, or their ECFMG certification is absent, and you may rush to fix it like a few weeks or a month later, but by that time, it's too late. The filter's already been applied. So that's another major one. I've mentioned U.S. clinical experience. 4 months is great. If you have 4 months of U.S. clinical experience, wonderful. 2 months is probably minimum. And I think people rush it, too much, where they rush the steps testing as well as the U.S. clinical experience. And if they apply with just like a week or two or none, you're going to get that disappointment. And then it's better just to plan ahead and not go through the process of disappointment if you don't have what you need in order to go through it. So that's important. What else? Other filters. Research is a funny one. Research has actually dropped down for the initial residency step. For non-surgical has not been as much of a filter these days as it used to be. It is a filter for fellowships, but not as much for residency. You need to do at least typically some research, but more is not necessarily going to get you a better placement for a residency position. Languages, believe it or not, can be a filter. If you've got a program where half the population is Spanish speaking and you don't speak Spanish, that may be a problem. Location is not like where you pick regions. That's not really a filter per se, because if you don't have alignment with the program, it just shows up as blank. But some programs will give you extra credit of sorts if you have alignment with their program on that. So I think those are the main ones.
And yeah, thank you for answering in so much detail. And I think that distinction is important because applicants hear so much about holistic review without always knowing what may happen before that deeper review even begins. Adeena?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Zara, and thank you so much, Dr. Bray, for diving deep into the filters that programs are using. I would like to ask that once an applicant has received this kind of a deeper review, what would separate someone who is simply qualified from someone a reviewer actually remembers and wants to interview?
Yeah, that's a good question. And as you were talking, one other filter I have to mention is the fail attempts on the steps. Every program's going to have like their magic number. You can get away with one attempt, you can get away with two attempts, you can get away with none, and they usually will stick to that as well too. Again, we can talk about strategy of getting around things that get filtered out later, but that's another one. Now, so when you go through an application review, people want to be able to be that person that stands out, that looks magical, and that's what they imagine kind of the picking process to be, right? I'm sitting here looking at your application. Wow, you're going to thrive in this program. You're going to be a great doctor, so much potential, and I'm going to pick this person. But the reality is, because you pick so many people, you put so many people on your match list. A lot of people are good, and you never know kind of what they're going to do. What you're doing a lot more with picking an application is risk management. And that's a different way to think about it rather than picking kind of winners. You're picking somebody who isn't going to crash and burn during residency. So that's why you're looking for things like gaps. You're looking for things like attempts or failures. You're looking for how did that person cope with hardship of some kind? And you're trying to now extrapolate that forward over the next 3 or 4 years and make sure that when they hit that intern year, that they can cope with the intensity, that they can cope with, if they need to study for step 3, that they can layer that on to their residency. Can they cope with the research that's required in order to get into fellowship during residency? Can they cope with dealing with people who are, different personalities on teams? Can they cope with patients who are not appreciative or grumpy, but need your help nonetheless? Can you cope with all of the pressures of residency and of medicine? It's not just residency, but medicine in general. And then when you get to the boards, can you pass the boards? So if you find the person that has a cohesive, coherent kind of record, that looks like they're going to be able to survive all of that stuff and thrive, that's good enough to get onto the rank list. Again, you're not looking for necessarily the winner. But you're doing that holistic review towards where you're. A lot of times it is in that debate where committee is now looking at the application. So you've whittled it down to that 800, and you're trying to figure out who are the 200 or 250 that you invite for interview. Somewhere in that process, that's where the holistic review kind of goes on. Okay. A lot of applicants really spend a lot of time on personal statements. Like I see people spending 2 months, revising one paragraph on the personal statement. And that's a lot of energy spent on that. But it turns out that the personal statement is usually not something that gets people the interview. Like the content of the personal statement is not something a faculty member will hold up and say, look at this personal statement. It's awesome. Go for the interview. If it's weird, or if it's disconnected, or if it looks like it's AI generated and extremely generic, it can be a barrier. It can be something like, look, I read this personal statement. It was horrible. Let's just skip on this person. So it can serve that purpose rather than kind of getting the application reviewed. Now, what I think a lot of programs are looking at a lot more now are the experiences. And what they're looking for on the experiences is not just what did you do, at that experience. They want to know, how did it impact you? How did it change you? How did it make you a better doctor? How did it make you a better person? How did it make you a better leader? That reflection is going to be something that carries forward with your rotations in residency, with your jobs, as a practicing physician. And that's what you're buying into, not what you were exposed to. You're buying into the ability to reflect on things. So that's something that's part of that holistic review as well, too. If you have little blips, like a failed attempt or a gap, your chance to explain that is in kind of the personal statement or in, various areas of the chart, various areas of the application. You don't want to hide from it. You want to own it. You want to show how you are a better person because of it, how you grew from it. That is part of your application. And like I said, you're trying to pick, as a program director, you're trying to pick somebody that understands failure and can work around it and move forward and still succeed. So it's part of your application. Don't hide from it. That's your chance to explain it. Letters of recommendation, we haven't touched on too much, but that's definitely a very strong part of a holistic review. Letters of recommendation there should be one letter of recommendation at least in there that really knows your style of working through problems, of dealing with life, of dealing with failure, of what are your motivations. You need to have an advocate in this business, and your letters of recommendation are your documented advocacy from somebody in the system, and that's important. 3 generic letters is not going to help you out. People get so bored and so tired of 3 like generic letters, even if that letter is from like a department head or a dean or whatever. We don't want just generic letters. We want somebody within the business that knows you and says this direction that you're on is going to be good for this person and for their career track. Ideally, sure, if you're interested in, let's say, rheumatology or hematology or, some subspecialty, great, have the letter from there. But the key is that they got to know you and be able to comment on you and your trajectory. So I think that kind of takes you into holistic review a little bit more.
Absolutely. And I think thank you so much, because this actually tells applicants the exact thing that they're trying to understand, that once they have actually met all the basic requirements for the exams, clinical experiences, LORs, what would actually give someone a reason to advocate for them? Zara?
Thank you, Adeena. And shifting the gears a little to the ERAS application itself. On the application, you can select up to 10 experiences and identify up to 3 as the most meaningful. How should the applicant decide what belongs in those spaces and what makes an experience description genuinely useful to the reviewer?
So cohesive, recent experiences make a lot of sense there. So you need to think about, like I mentioned earlier, for me, when I look back on my career, I like kind of building or constructing or being a part of systems to create outcomes. That's a very easy, cohesive message that can now track between kind of my research career, my program director career, and now my direct primary care kind of business career. It's just a core of who I am. And if I'm going to list 10 experiences, what I want to do is say how each of those experiences, it's like you pick up a diamond and you look at the facet, you look at one of the surfaces. You can have 10 different, 12 different surfaces on that diamond. Each one has a different color, each one has a different reflection. And what you're doing with that is to describe the diamond fully. You want to go through each experience. I want to know who Zara is. I want to know who Adeena is. I want to know who, you are, based on when I put you into that environment. How is it that you process what you see? How is it that changed you? How is it that it made you better? What surprised you? What shocked you about that rotation? Did you learn some leadership things that are going to contribute to your career? That's what I'm looking for. So keep the listing of what you did minimal. Keep the reflection of how it affected you, how it changed you, how you processed it maximal in those things. And absolutely, try and use all of those. I think time-wise, like I mentioned earlier, people will spend 2 or 3 months on personal statement, but they'll spend like one day maybe on those 10 experiences. And that's the exact opposite of what you want to do. You want to spend a lot more time kind of thinking carefully and that reflection on those experiences. And then the 3 top ones, you get another like 250 words or something like that. Again, use that for why this was important to me, why it's going to be important for my career, how it changed me. Okay.
Absolutely. And that's really useful because those sections can easily become a list of things someone has done instead of showing what those experiences really meant for them. Adeena?
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you so much, Zara. Dr. Bray, I would like to ask that now, since we have these 10 experiences on our application, and usually, as per the suggestion that it should be reflective, the personal statement is also somewhere where applicants try to be reflective. And also, like you mentioned, they put so much pressure on that one page. From your years of reviewing residency applications, what do you think would actually make a personal statement strong and memorable? And what do applicants tend to really overthink that they should avoid?
So to be honest, I'm going to reverse the logic of what people, mostly think. What tends to be memorable about a personal statement is when it's either weird or kind of poorly coherent. So when it's a bad personal statement, that's when it stands out, and that's what kind of hurts you. When it is a bland but still reflective and coherent personal statement, it's fine. It passes the hurdle. It's not going to get you the interview. Even if you have like this great, wonderful personal statement, I don't think anybody holds it up and says, look at this wonderful personal statement. We have to interview this person. However, they do hold up, for example, a wonderful letter of recommendation that says when you were on the wards, as a medical student, and you ended up shining so brightly that the interns got jealous, and you were kind of running the team. People will hold that letter of recommendation up from that person, and it will get you the interview. So what should you do in the personal statement? I like stories. We as a human, we are very story driven. When we see a good story in a movie, in a video show, a video or a book, we want to read it and we want to spend a little bit of time thinking about it. So that's what I'm looking for in the personal statement. I want to know, where did your interest in medicine sort of start? If it started, a lot of times it's with a family member that got sick or died or had a hospital encounter. Start with that. If somebody start with how that emotionally affected you initially, and then branch out from there, how it ended up affecting your life and your career. That's pretty typical. In typically early education, a lot of us are attracted to sciences or biology. Don't just tell me that you were attracted to them. Tell me why. What was it about the sciences? What was it about biology that attracted you to those? Then fast forward, get into medical school. Tell me about some of the experiences that linger with you, whether positive or negative. Why did they, and try and make it again coherent. Are you interested? Your story is going to be your story. I don't want to give people an individual kind of linear coherence, but your story is going to be your story. Coherence is important. When you bring up the experiences in the medical school, make sure they're kind of coherent with kind of what you're trying to sell of who you are. And then go fast forward to kind of why the specialty that you're applying to now. Why does it work for you? What do you think you're going to be bringing to the table? Don't focus as much on the program or the place that you're applying to. Nobody wants to have their ego stroked, oh, I'm applying to this program. It's so good. It has so many different things. You can show that you've done your homework and that you understand what the program has, and it's a good match for you. And by bringing you into that program, you can now augment kind of what's already create synergy with what's going on at that program. That's a good personal statement. That's what I would target. Too often we come from an academic world where we're attracted to a program. The program in the job world, the job needs to know what they're getting from bringing you on board. And this transition happens in residency. So the residency program needs to know what is it that they're getting by bringing you on board. And you have to understand what the program is, what their goals are, and try and make it so that your story matches with that.
Absolutely.
Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I think this answer would really help the applicants watching our show right now really understand how they can differentiate their experiences from the list of 10 meaningful ones and the one they should be putting on their personal statement. On to you, Zara.
I'm going to interrupt you there for a second. So this is strategy, right? So personal statements, you don't have a one size fits all personal statement. You can have individual personal statements. And one of the strategies that I always do advocate for, if you've got your top 10 programs, adjust your personal statement. It's not that you're creating a new version of yourself. It's that you're taking elements of who you are and matching it specifically to that program. So, do keep a little bit of an individualization in that personal statement for your top programs. So I would say that's important.
Absolutely. I agree. Zara, on to you.
Thank you, Adeena. And talking about the LORs, letter of recommendations themselves, what separates a letter of recommendation that is simply positive from one that will actually make you advocate for an applicant?
Yeah. Again, advocacy is everything. And it's something, again, that becomes more and more important as you get further in your career. Having somebody that knows you, that's within the system, that knows you're going to be a good fit, speaks way louder than you speaking about yourself and saying that you're going to be a good fit. So advocacy is everything, and it gets stronger and stronger as you move further in your career. And it starts right here. So a good letter of recommendation, you want somebody that has seen you work, ideally for, if you're doing a U.S. clinical experience rotation, somebody that's seen you work for weeks, if not a month, and then writes based on not general understanding of you or general comments, but based on specific things that you do, you thought, you saw, you acted upon. specific situations. It will form a cohesive story. So that letter of recommendation writer might say, great bedside manner, and then illustrate great bedside manner with 2 or 3 situations of where you interacted with patients in a really memorable way. That's what kind of makes a good letter of recommendation. And that's why it's very difficult for you to go to somebody who hasn't seen you, hasn't worked with you, or hasn't seen you clinically and say, hey, here's my CV. Can you write me a letter of recommendation? Because that's going to be generic. They don't know your grit. They don't know your style. And that's what you're looking for. What do I recommend for letters of recommendation? I always recommend, so if you've had some contact with a person, meet with that person towards the end of that contact, give them information about yourself, let them interview you. Give them a CV, give them why you're doing what you're doing. The more information that you give them about yourself, about how you think, about what's important to you, the more they can weave that into their letter of recommendation and make it now a coherent story from what your experiences did, from what your personal statement might say, to what your letter of recommendation would be. Now, that being said, if you're so it's important to get US. If you are an IMG, having US writers is important. Don't necessarily rule out like a really good letter that's from outside of the country that really knows you well, knows your work ethic, knows your passions, that kind of thing. That's okay. But the majority should be kind of US letter writers. Then the other question is, if I'm going to be applying to program X, should I get a letter of recommendation from that university or from that program? Is that going to help me? It probably does. But it's going to only help you with that program typically. It's not going to necessarily help you with other programs. So if you're competitive, if your application matches the type of resident that they typically accept, great. That probably would give you a little bit of points at that program. If you're going to a top-notch university program and you look at the residents they accept and it doesn't really match with, your application, it's probably not going to help you that much to get a letter of recommendation from from that top tier university system as much as anything else. So that's a little bit of strategy, but the big strategy is try and get it close to after you finish a contact. Try and let them interview you. If they don't want to interview you, tell them I'm going to meet with you regardless. And I'm going to give you a little bit of information about myself, my core values, and let them then ask for it shortly after that. So don't let too much time pass after you have contact. Get that on paper, and it's going to be a lot better of a letter of recommendation.
Absolutely. And that is such an important point because applicants really focus so much on who writes the letter, especially when what really matters is what the letter is communicating. Adeena?
And by interviewing with the person before they write it, you have an idea of did they have you on board just to have you on board? Was it just money? Was it just, because you asked? Or did they really notice you? And you feel that when you talk with them at the end of the rotation.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Adeena?
Yeah, thank you so much, Zara. I think we had a splendid discussion on letter of recommendation and personal statements and overall the application. The next element that we would like to talk about would be research and finding meaningful opportunities. As research has become a major focus for many applicants, while generic cold outreach has become increasingly common. If someone genuinely wants research experience or mentorship, what approach is more likely to lead to a meaningful opportunity today?
It's a great question, and it is more than just research. It's all opportunities in general. To how do you connect with people to get any kind of opportunity? Why email was popular when you were getting like 3 emails a day, you would be like, oh, I got an email, I'm going to read it. Now you get like 500 emails a day and half of them are spam and junk. and you work really hard on like tweaking your spam filters to like eliminate everything. That's the reality of email now. And when you're working, so you got to look from the perspective of a program director or faculty member. The emails that they have to read are the ones that usually come from internal, from their bosses, from the people that they're working with, from their residents. And you're going to get hundreds of those a day. So you're going to create filters that filter out a lot of times external emails. And a lot of these university systems or residency programs will put like this big red, signal from an external source. And, then you're just like, oh, whatever, I don't need to prioritize that. So right now, cold emails for busy programs, I would say, is not, the best, or for busy PIs or for busy mentors, people that are doing a lot of stuff. They just fall. It's so easy for them to fall into the background and just get forgotten, ignored, not necessarily intentionally ignored, but just too many things going on. The fire hose is open. So they work if a person isn't that busy. If you're dealing with, like, let's say somebody in the private community, they don't really have a lot of emails. It might work because they'll read your story and be attracted to it and then kind of respond to it. But for a busy PI or for a busy program director or APD, tends not to work that well. So what works is knowing people. And people from the medical school that you went to, you have alumni, you sometimes will meet people at conferences. You might meet people when you go visit cities, friends. So when you've got to understand your network, keep track of your network, and that network is really important to you. You can pull on that network. Now, some people will help you, some people won't help you, but the chances that they help you are much, much higher when you have a network like that you've established. So expanding your network is important as well, too, right? So go to conferences. When you're at a conference, don't just like tour the town. That's a stupid use of going to a conference. Invest in getting to know the speaker, go to people's posters, talk with them about their career, talk with them about their interests, connect with them, ask them about their struggles. See if you can get invited, out for a little dinner or for a lunch with a group. Sometimes like residents or fellows like go out together for a little lunch or a dinner. See if you can get invited to that. You can really learn a lot about people, connect with them, and somebody is going to advocate for you when they know you're a real human being, not when you're just an email address or like another text on the computer. When you're a real human being, they're going to advocate for you. They're going to help you. They're going to try and work with you. So research in the US is challenging for some people. There's a lot of it's become an industry where there's a lot of commercialization now, finding people, both clinical experience, but also research experience. You can sometimes pay to have clinical experience. Sometimes it's a type of research fellowship. Sometimes it's a master's degree kind of learning program. Any of those are fine, but you have to look at what's reasonable. If you don't have a lot of money lying around, I would not go into debt, paying for something. I would try and use other strategies and pull on that network. A lot of times you can do research with just your peers in medical school. You can get together, find 5 or 6 people with diverse talents, some people with some data science, some people with statistics, some people that have published before, know the ropes, know the pathway, and bring them into a team together and say, all right, guys, let's do some systematic reviews. Let's do some meta-analyses, and meet with them. I would say whether it's virtual or kind of in person, meet with them on a regular schedule. And that really does work, and it gets some publications out. But again, think globally here. Letter of recommendation from good clinical experience probably ranks higher than massive pot of research for most programs. Do research, do go through it. Some programs will say, tell me how you came up with that idea. What were the challenges you did on that research project? They want to know that you can generate research. But if you're going to balance spending time on a good clinical experience to get that letter, spend it there over spending getting 20 publications.
Absolutely.
Good.
Thank you so much. And I think this is a much more practical way to think about research instead of just collecting another line on the CV, but actually finding a way to contribute and build a real relationship. And while it's become increasingly difficult to find opportunities for applicants, I think we also understand why, with an increasing pool, program directors, or for that matter, any mentor, values face to face or in person experience to advocate for or extend an opportunity to a candidate. Um, Zara,
Let me pause you there for a second, because what you said was really important. It's the why do you do research, and where research is important for a program, they're going to dig into that during the interview. Why are you doing research? If it comes off as I'm doing it so that I can get the application through, or I'm doing it so that I can get residency, that will be detected. You need to understand the why behind research. Medicine moves forward because of research. Medicine gets better because of research. If you don't do good research, you end up getting this junk, claims on the internet, on social media, TikTok, Instagram. Take this supplement, do this thing. It's a magic pill. Da 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 da. We want medicine to get better. We need the research. You have to be a part of it if you want medicine to get better. So that's why we want to do research, not because we're trying to fill up a CV or get an application through the residency.
I definitely couldn't agree more. Having done so much research myself and owing a passion to research since the beginning of med school, I've truly seen throughout my 5 years of med school that a lot of people, masses, actually do research just to add another line to their CV, but there's so much more deeper to research, and I think that's where the most value lies. Zara, would you like to ask the next question?
Absolutely. And as being the directors of research at MedNews Week, we couldn't agree more with you.
That's true. You're doing a great job over there promoting the research culture. I love it.
Absolutely. And talking about the program signals and geographic preference a little bit, I think both of these can really shape the application strategy. So how should applicants think about them together, balancing genuine interest, program fit, competitiveness, and geography, especially if they do not have strong ties to the particular region?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of elements in there. Signals are probably the most important thing for getting a program to pay attention to you. But second to signals, geographic alignment does add to that. So signals will probably jump you from down into the single digits to like 30 or 40% chance of getting reviewed. And then a geographic alignment can jump you another 10% up there. So the statistical benefit for a geographic alignment is important. You want it to be genuine, however, if you have a genuine geographic kind of preference when you list it. Some of us have family in some areas. Some of us don't have family. Some of us have family but don't want to be near family. So then you choose the opposite side of the country as well too. So whatever is important for you, that's what should be on your application. But just again, be realistic that geographic alignment means you shouldn't be kind of putting in your top 10 batch programs that are outside of that geographic alignment. You should be looking within it. I think visiting a place is really important, and it's become less of a thing to do ever since we do a lot of virtual interviews. I do like virtual interviews. It does bring costs down. It does make the process of getting accepted and interviewing fairer. I don't think virtual interviews are going to go anywhere. However, and a lot of times, our AIM, our Academic Alliance for Internal Medicine, advocates for not doing site visits or second looks, physical second looks, until after the rank list is certified, to try and prevent kind of, oh, you showed up, so therefore you should rank higher on my rank list, to prevent that kind of thing. I think, though, it's really important for you to know that geographic region if you're going to be living there. Because it's nice to start growing roots into an area. You might not think you're growing roots at the time that you're applying for residency, but people start having, families. They meet people. They start maybe thinking about kids. They start thinking about, they start learning about schools. They start learning about the culture. They start thinking about a house, and you want the potential for roots to be able to grow, if that's the way it is. So you should know the region, you should know the hospital. I always like to kind of keep a list of about 10 or 12 programs that match with what you are on your application, that are realistic reaches, that are places you would enjoy going. And I recommend trying to get to at least, most of those places that are the 10 or 12 on your list of programs. You want to not only know the region, you want to know the city a little bit. You want to go to the grocery store, see how people interact with each other. Hang out at the library at the, if there's a university there, hang out at the, on the university campus, hang out at the hospital, go get a coffee, understand how things look, and just sit there and for an hour, drink the coffee, look at people, look at how everything works. That's important to do before you commit 3 years or potentially longer if you've grown roots to a certain area. So be realistic, use it. It does help you. That's my summary of it. Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's really helpful because signals and geography can look like separate parts of the ERAS, but applicants are really trying to make an overall strategy make sense. Adeena?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Zara. I would like to continue with asking our match confidential question. What would be the one thing you wish every residency applicant understood about the match that they often do not hear enough?
Yeah, your application gets through the door, but it's who you are as a person that really gets you onto the rank list. That's the most important thing. People spend a lot of time tweaking numbers. That just gets you through the door, gets you the interview. How you are on the interview, how you are as a person gets you the residency, gets you on the rank list, gets you to the right place on the rank list. So don't neglect that. If some of us are more introverts, but we learn to be extroverted when we need to be. Some of us are more extroverts and we talk too much, and we have to kind of be more reflective and tone that back. Having emotional intelligence about how you appear, and how you conduct yourself and how you interact with people, is important. Have people around you that can give you feedback honestly about, how you are. Do you focus on yourself all the time? Do you talk too much? Do you talk too little? Are you a pessimist? Are you an optimist? Do you always talk about negative things? Do you always bring the room down? Have people around you that tell you a little bit about your personality and can do it honestly without you getting offended. And then, just understand that about yourself. It allows you to tweak things, which is important in patient care. If you think about it, when you walk into a patient room, you should know how you appear to that patient. Do you appear confident? Do you appear, like you don't know what you're talking about? Do you appear disheveled? Do you appear angry? Do you carry your emotions from the last situation into the current situation? You need to have an awareness of how you appear in a room full of people. And that's something that's underestimated as well, too.
Yeah, that's a message we hope applicants carry with them beyond just this episode. And thank you so much, Dr. Bray, for that answer. You also mentioned that you like the rapid fire round, so we're bringing it back. Short questions, first instinct. Are we ready? One detailed letter from someone who truly knows you, or a bigger name with a more generic letter?
Definitely truly knows you. Definitely. Yeah.
Use all 10 experience slots or leave space if every entry is not adding something meaningful?
Yeah, good question. I would probably leave space. You want recent, you want a coherent story. If you've told your story sufficiently, finish with that. Yeah.
Personal statement, memorable story, or clear, authentic voice?
Clear, authentic voice, personally.
Research more projects or deeper ownership of fewer projects?
Yeah, deeper ownership. I'm a research guy. Not everybody did this. I really dig into one single project when I've got somebody in front of me. I want to know that they understand it, and I want to know the depth of that understanding. So one single project.
For signals, aspiration or alignment?
Alignment. Yeah, definitely. Aspiration can get you burned. Alignment.
Absolutely. One section of ERAS, applicants consistently underestimate.
As I mentioned, the clinical experiences, they will list the what that they did on all of those things, and they'll just pack it in one day, and they won't spend the appropriate amount of time for reflection. That's an area that I would spend time on. Now, second to that, I'm gonna say is the score, and I didn't mention this earlier. It needs to be mentioned. Do not rush taking step exams. If you're not ready for it, push it off. That number is frozen forever. If you get a marginal score that passes but doesn't quite meet the specifications for the programs, you're stuck with it. So do use like UWorld or what have you to figure out where you fall on the spectrum, and don't take the test until you're ready, even if it means pushing off applications for another 6 months or a year.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Bray. And finally, we have a last question for you. You have spent years training and mentoring physicians. When you think about the people you have helped shape and the patients and trainees they will go on to influence, what do you hope they carry forward from you? And how would you want your impact on medicine and medical education to be remembered?
So in medicine, we're punished for curiosity sometimes. I'm motivated by. I have a mind that always likes to ask questions. When I was in medical school, there were two ways to do things. You could memorize your way through getting good tests, or you could think your way through getting good tests. Thinking your way through getting good test scores was much harder because you really had to understand the concept, and it took a lot more investment of time than just to memorize your way. And I think in medicine, in order to be adaptable to our patients, to a changing system, to all the new technology that's out there, we have to maintain and to continue to learn after residency. I can't tell you how many people kind of decrease the learning curve after residency and they don't continue to learn. That comes from curiosity. If I can foster, just be curious about why things don't work, why things didn't work for this patient, why things were different with this patient. Take that into curiosity and think about it, look into it, read about it. If you're good enough, interested enough in research about it, but really try and maintain the curiosity within the whole system that kind of promotes uniformity, right? Doctors are really smart people. I see them be curious. I see them play instruments. I see them learn languages. I see them do art. They are curious people, but the system wants uniformity. And so be curious about when you see variation.
Absolutely. Dr. Bray, thank you so much for your time, your honesty, and for helping us launch Match Confidential. We are really grateful to have you with us as the first guest here, and we are excited to continue the conversation with you.
Thank you, Zara. Thank you, Adeena.
Yeah, and this is only just the beginning. Dr. Bray will be joining us again as we move into the next stages of the residency process. And throughout Match Confidential, we will also hear from other program directors, educators, and residency leaders across specialties.
This is Match Confidential, a MedNews Week series.
Connecting medicine globally.
Thank you for joining us.
We'll see you in the next episode.